fall of Keir Starmer, Britain's political crisis deepens. Right then, if you're not already subscribed to UK Connors, do yourself a favor and hit that subscribe button now, because what I'm about to tell you will shake the very foundations of British politics, and trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. The unthinkable has happened. Sir Keir Starmer, the man who promised to restore integrity to Downing Street, who swept Labour to victory with pledges of competence and stability, is now facing the most humiliating political collapse since Liz Truss's catastrophic tenure. But this isn't just another political stumble. This is a complete and utter demolition of everything Labour thought they'd built. The numbers don't lie, and they are absolutely brutal. According to the latest opinion poll, a staggering 54% of the British public now want Keir Starmer to resign immediately. Let that sink in for a moment. More than half the country has lost faith in their Prime Minister after just months in office. This isn't the honeymoon period ending with a gentle decline. This is a political marriage that's gone straight to the divorce courts without passing go. What makes this even more devastating is that 34% of those calling for his resignation are people who actually voted Labour in the last election. Think about that. 1 in 3 Labour voters now regret their choice so profoundly that they want their own Prime Minister gone. That's not just political disappointment. That's betrayal on an industrial scale. Starmer's approval rating has plummeted to a catastrophic minus 42%, putting him in the same league as Rishi Sunak at his absolute worst right after he announced his resignation. We're talking about approval numbers that are within spitting distance of Boris Johnson's minus 44% rating during the final death throes of his administration. Remember those chaotic final days of Johnson's premiership? The constant scandals, the cabinet resignations, the complete loss of authority? Well, Starmer has managed to reach those depths without even having a proper scandal. Just sheer, mind-numbing incompetence. But here's where it gets truly extraordinary, and rather deliciously ironic for those of us who remember the endless lectures about Tory chaos. Reform UK, led by Nigel Farage, is now polling at 31%, making them the most popular party in Britain. Yes, you heard that correctly. The party that didn't even exist as a serious political force just a few years ago is now leading in the polls, while Labour has collapsed to a pitiful 22%. The Conservatives, despite their own struggles, are managing 17%, and even the Liberal Democrats are holding steady at 12%. This represents a complete inversion of British politics. The party that won a landslide victory is now trailing in third place behind a populist upstart and a Conservative party that was supposedly finished. It's the kind of political earthquake that historians will be studying for decades to come. The most damning statistic of all? Only 67% of people who voted Labour in the general election say they would vote Labour again. That means 1 in 3 Labour voters have already decided they made a mistake. Where are they going? Well, 12% are staying home, 6% are defecting to Reform, 6% to the Liberal Democrats, 6% to the Greens, and a mere 2% to the Conservatives. This isn't just voter dissatisfaction. This is a complete disintegration of a political coalition. The trigger for this spectacular collapse appears to be Starmer's handling of the D-Day commemorations, or rather, his spectacular mishandling of them. When a Prime Minister can't even manage to show proper respect at one of the most sacred events in the British calendar without causing a political crisis, you know something has gone fundamentally wrong. The D-Day debacle wasn't just a diplomatic embarrassment. It was a moment that crystallized everything the public already suspected about Starmer's leadership, that he simply doesn't understand what it means to be British. Even among his own supporters, the faith is evaporating. Only 41% of Labour voters approve of how he's performing, while 39% actively disapprove. When your own party supporters are split almost evenly on whether you're doing a good job, you're not just in trouble, you're in terminal decline. The public has already started looking for alternatives, and the results are fascinating. When asked who should replace Starmer, the overwhelming choice is Andy Burnham, the mayor of Greater Manchester, who commands 13% support. This is followed by Health Secretary Wes Streeting at 5%, though it's worth noting that Burnham isn't even an MP currently, which tells you something about the desperation for fresh leadership. Meanwhile, the Conservative Party is having its own identity crisis. A third of respondents think Kemi Badenoch should resign as Conservative leader, though 48% of Conservative voters from the last election want her to stay, with 29% believing she should go and 27% wanting her to remain. When asked about potential replacements, Shadow Housing Secretary Sir James Cleverly and Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick are tied at 8% each. But let's be brutally honest about what we're witnessing here. This isn't just about polling numbers or political personalities. This is about the fundamental breakdown of trust between the British people and their political establishment. Starmer was supposed to be different. He was a forensic barrister who would restore competence to government, the steady hand who would heal the wounds left by years of conservative chaos. Instead, he's proven to be just another politician who overpromised and underdelivered on an epic scale. The irony is delicious, isn't it? Labour spent years attacking Conservatives for their instability, their chaos, their inability to govern effectively. They promised to be the adults in the room, the serious people who could actually run the country. Yet here we are, with Labour polling third and Reform UK, leading the polls. If this were a political satire, critics would dismiss it as too unrealistic. What's particularly galling for Labour supporters must be the realization that they've handed Nigel Farage the greatest gift of his political career. Farage has spent decades trying to break into mainstream British politics, always falling just short of real power. Now, thanks to Labour's spectacular incompetence, Reform is polling higher than both major parties combined polled in some elections. It's the kind of own goal that would make even the most hapless footballer wince. The question now isn't whether Starmer can recover. The numbers suggest that ship has well and truly sailed. The question is how much damage he'll do to Labour and to the country before he finally accepts the inevitable. Every day he clings to power is another day that undermines faith in democratic institutions, another day that hands ammunition to those who argue that the whole system is broken. James Crouch from Opinion put it perfectly when he said this is a humbling position for a leader when the majority of the nation wants him to quit. Humbling doesn't begin to cover it. This is political humiliation on a scale that will define careers and destroy reputation for generations. The establishment media, of course, will continue to make excuses, to suggest that this is just a rough patch that all governments go through. They'll point to historical precedents, talk about the challenges of governing in difficult times, maybe even blame the previous government for leaving such a mess. But the British people aren't buying it anymore. They can see through the spin, the excuses, and the deflections. They know incompetence when they see it, and they are not prepared to tolerate it just because it comes with a Labour rosette. What we're witnessing is nothing less than the collapse of the post-war political consensus. The idea that competent technocrats could manage the decline of British power with efficiency and dignity is being exposed as a fantasy it always was. The British people want something different. They want leaders who actually understand their concerns, who share their values, who won't lecture them about what they should think while failing to deliver on the basics of governance. This is why Reform is surging. It's not because Nigel Farage has suddenly become a more attractive politician. It's because it's offering something that neither Labour nor the Conservatives seem capable of providing, a recognition that the current system isn't working and a willingness to do something about it. Whether you agree with Reform solutions or not, you have to admit that they've correctly diagnosed the problem. British politics is broken, and the traditional parties are part of that brokenness. The tragedy for Labour is that they had everything handed to them on a silver platter. The Conservatives were exhausted, discredited, and divided. The economy was struggling, public services were under strain, and the public was desperate for change. All Labour had to do was provide competent, boring governance while avoiding major scandals. They couldn't even manage that. Instead, they've managed to make themselves less popular than a Conservative party that had just given us Liz Truss and the mini-budget disaster. They've made Nigel Farage look like a serious statesman by comparison. They've turned what should have been a generational opportunity to reshape British politics into a cautionary tale about the dangers of political complacency. The really damning thing is that this isn't even about ideology. The British public aren't rejecting Labour because they've moved too far left or too far right. They're rejecting them because they are simply not very good at the job. It's a competence crisis, pure and simple, and there's no coming back from that once the public has made up their minds. So where do we go from here? Well, if history is any guide, Starmer will cling on for as long as possible, hoping that something, anything, will turn around his fortunes. But the brutal mathematics of democracy suggests that it's fighting a losing battle. When 54% of the public wants you gone, when your own supporters are deserting you in droves, when the opposition is polling higher than you ever managed, the writing isn't just on the wall, it's been carved in stone with a sledgehammer. The question isn't whether Starmer will go, It's when and how much damage he'll do to his party and his country before he finally accepts the inevitable. Every day he remains in office is another day that British politics becomes more unstable, more unpredictable, and more dangerous for everyone involved. This is a reality of modern British politics: swift, brutal, and unforgiving. The days when political leaders could rely on party loyalty and media deference to see them through tough times are over. The public has more information, more alternatives, and less patience than ever before. They want results, not excuses, and they are prepared to punish failure with ruthless efficiency. The fall of Keir Starmer is just the beginning. This is a political revolution in slow motion, and nobody, not Labour, not the Conservatives, not even Reform, can be certain where it will end. But one thing is clear: British politics will never be the same again, and that might just be exactly what the country needs. What happens next will define not just the next election, but the next generation of British politics. And if you want to stay ahead of the curve, make sure you're subscribed to UK Connors, because we'll be here to break down every twist, every turn, and every spectacular political implosion as it happens. Hit that subscribe button now. Trust me, you won't